When I first met Daniel, I thought he was just another quiet guy moving into the building. He carried himself like someone who'd seen too much, but wanted no one to know. I remember standing in the lobby with a bag of groceries, watching him struggle with a heavy box. Instinctively, I offered a hand. "Appreciate it," he said with a quick nod, his voice low, deliberate. That's all it took. From that small gesture, a kind of friendship began. At first, it was simple things, grabbing a beer together, watching a game on TV, trading stories about lousy landlords. He didn't say much about his past, but when he did, his words carried weight, like every sentence was edited for effect. My girlfriend, Laura, thought he was a little intense. "There's something about him," she said one night, "like he's always measuring people." Even me. I laughed it off. Daniel was just private, I told her. Not everyone wore their life on their sleeve. But then small things began to change. Daniel always seemed to know when I was home. He'd knock at the right moments, when Laura and I had just finished arguing, or when I was trying to work late at night. He'd show up with 2 beers and a smirk, like he'd been waiting for the perfect time. And the strangest part? I didn't mind. Part of me liked it. It felt good having someone who seemed to understand me better than anyone else. What I didn't realize then was how quickly that closeness would shift. How one neighbor could slip under my skin, twist the cracks in my life, and make me question everything I thought was solid. Everything started with Daniel moving in, and everything would end because of him. Daniel had this way of making me feel like I wasn't wasting my time. Most guys you meet, you keep it surface level, talk about sports, weather, bills, and move on. With him, conversations cut deeper. He'd ask questions no one else asked. Stuff like, "You ever feel like you're stuck in your own life?" I laughed at first. Every damn Monday, I told him. But the more we talked, the more I realized Daniel wasn't just looking for small talk. He was probing, testing me. And I'll admit it, part of me liked the challenge. Laura didn't. She hated how often he came around. One night she whispered, "He's not just your friend, you know. He wants something." I brushed it off. Men don't usually accuse other men of wanting something. That's not how we think. But later, when I caught Daniel giving me that half smile as Laura walked past in her gym clothes, I wondered. Still, he was good company. We drank, we argued about politics. He even taught me a few things about fixing up my old car. But every now and then, I'd catch that look in his eyes, sharp, assessing, like I was part of the game he was already winning. That's when it hit me. Maybe Daniel wasn't just a neighbor. Maybe he was a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They show you things you'd rather not see. And what he showed me was that I wasn't as in control of my life as I thought. The first real red flag showed up on a Thursday night. I came home late from work, bone tired, just wanted to crack a beer and crash. But when I walked into the apartment, Daniel was already there, sitting on my couch, watching my TV. Laura let him in. "He was just waiting for you," she said, but her voice had that edge, like she wasn't buying her own excuse. Daniel stood, cool as ever, and handed me a cold one. "Figured you'd want one," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world to walk into another man's place and make himself at home. I should have told him to leave. Should have drawn that line right then. But I didn't, because part of me respected the audacity. Most guys tiptoe around boundaries. Daniel kicked them down and called it friendship. Later that night, after he left, Laura looked at me. "He's not normal," she said. I shrugged. Neither are we. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the scene in my head. The way Daniel sat in my chair. The way he opened my fridge like it belonged to him. The way Laura watched me, waiting for me to finally see what she already did. Daniel wasn't just in my apartment. He was sliding into my life. And I was letting him. Daniel had this way of talking that made you feel like you were always one step behind him. Smooth, confident, never raising his voice, but somehow it cut deeper than shouting. One night he leaned against my kitchen counter, swirling the last of his whiskey in the glass, and said, "You ever notice how people push you around when you're too polite?" I laughed it off, but he didn't smile. Think about it, man. Your boss piles work on you because you never say no. Your girl gets annoyed because you don't call her out when she crosses the line. And me? He paused, looked me dead in the eye. "I can walk in here any time I want, and you don't stop me." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. The next day at work, when my manager dumped another pointless report on my desk, I snapped back. Not yelling, but firm, sharp. Everyone looked at me like I'd grown a second head. For once, they didn't argue. They backed down. That night, Laura said, "You've changed. Daniel's rubbing off on you." Her tone wasn't a compliment. But in my chest, I felt something I hadn't in years: control. Daniel was teaching me to fight back. Or maybe he was teaching me to become more like him. Laura was right. Daniel was rubbing off on me. At first, it felt good, like slipping into a leather jacket that finally fit. I spoke with more edge, carried myself taller. Even the guys at the bar noticed. One of them joked, "Careful, man, you're starting to sound like your neighbor." But when I looked over my shoulder, Daniel wasn't laughing. He just raised his glass and gave me that little smirk, like a puppeteer proud of his strings. The shift inside me wasn't subtle anymore. I barked at a barista for messing up my order. Snapped at Laura when she questioned my late nights. The respect I thought I was gaining fell hollow. Like people weren't respecting me, they were respecting the shadow Daniel had thrown over me. One evening, he dropped by unannounced again. He paced the room like he owned it, then stopped in front of me. "You're learning fast," he said, "but you're hesitating. That hesitation, it'll kill you one day." It sounded less like advice and more like a warning. For the first time since he'd walked into my life, a thought crept in. What if Daniel isn't building me up? What if he's breaking me down? It happened on a Tuesday night. I came home late from work, shoulders heavy, mind buzzing. As I reached my door, I noticed Daniel's apartment was cracked open, just enough for a thin strip of light to spill into the hallway. I should have kept walking. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. I leaned closer and froze. Inside, Daniel wasn't the calm, confident mentor I knew. He was raging. His voice thundered, sharp and venomous, at someone on the phone. I couldn't catch every word, but the tone was unmistakable. Threats. Cold, deliberate threats. Then came the sound of glass shattering. My heart pounded. I took a step back, careful not to be seen. A second later, the door slammed shut, the hallway falling silent except for my shallow breathing. I barely made it into my own place before Daniel knocked, smiling, casual, as if nothing had happened. "Whiskey?" he asked, holding up a bottle. But now I saw it. The tremor in his hand, the flicker in his eyes that betrayed something darker. For the first time, I wasn't sure if Daniel was the man I wanted to become or the man I needed to run from. A week later, I caught myself doing something I swore I never would. At work, one of the guys from accounting tried to dump his mess onto me. Normally, I just grit my teeth and take it. But that day, something snapped. I leaned forward, lowered my voice the way Daniel does, and said, "Not my problem. Handle your own mistakes." The look on his face, stunned, almost intimidated, gave me a rush I didn't expect. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't the one being stepped on. But the victory was short-lived. That night, when I passed Daniel's apartment, he gave me that sly grin. Like he knew. Like he'd been waiting for me to cross that line. Over drinks, he told me, "See, it's in you. You just needed the push." And for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But then I remembered the shattered glass, the venom in his voice that night. The man I was starting to mirror wasn't just strong, he was dangerous. And if I wasn't careful, I'd become the very thing I feared. It didn't take long before that new edge of mine bled into my personal life. One evening, my girlfriend, Claire, asked why I was late. Normally, I'd stumble through excuses, try to smooth things over. But instead, I shrugged and said, "You'll deal with it. I've got bigger things to worry about." The words hung in the air like smoke. Her eyes widened, half hurt, half shocked, because she wasn't used to that side of me. Neither was I. Later, lying in bed, I realized my pulse was racing, not from guilt, but from the thrill of it. The same thrill I'd felt shutting down that coworker. The same thrill Daniel promised me, but also scared me. Because when I looked at Claire's face, turned away on the pillow, I wondered, was this confidence or was I just turning into Daniel? And the truth I didn't want to admit was, part of me liked it. A week later, I noticed a shift. It was Friday, and normally after work a few of us from the office would grab a drink. Nothing fancy, just beers, wings, dumb jokes. But that night, as we all packed up, I caught the glance. One guy whispered something to another, they laughed, and suddenly the invitation never came. I walked out alone. At first, I told myself I didn't care. Who needs him anyway? That was Daniel's voice echoing in my head. Strong, unapologetic. But as I drove home, the silence in the car was deafening. I thought about Claire, about how she'd barely spoken to me all week, about how my colleagues seemed to flinch now when I cut in with sharp remarks. Confidence was supposed to feel like freedom. Instead, it felt like standing on an island, bigger, taller, yes, but alone. That night, sitting on my balcony, I saw Daniel again across the courtyard. He lifted his glass in a silent toast, like he was proud. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if he was raising me up or laughing at how far I'd already fallen. I'd had enough of guessing. One night, after a few restless hours pacing my apartment, I finally decided to walk across the courtyard. Daniel's lights were still on, as always. When he opened the door, it was like he'd been expecting me. He leaned on the frame, that same smug half-smile on his face, and gestured me in without a word. His place was almost identical to mine, but colder. Sparse furniture, a faint smell of whiskey and smoke, and on the table, books on psychology, body language, even a few old military manuals. Been watching me? I asked, trying to sound casual. Daniel chuckled. Not watching. Guiding. There's a difference. I felt my fist clench. Guiding me into what? Because lately it feels like I'm losing more than I'm gaining. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one across the table. You're not losing. You're shedding. Weakness. Fear. The people who step away, they were never strong enough to stand beside you. I wanted to argue, but a part of me, the tired, frustrated part, wanted to believe him. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. Tell me, do you want to be liked? Or do you want to be respected? The question hung in the air, heavy, almost dangerous. Daniel's question echoed in my head. Do you want to be liked? Or do you want to be respected? I took the glass of whiskey, though my hand trembled slightly. I wasn't sure if it was the alcohol, his words, or the weight of what he was really asking me. I want both, I finally said, defiant. I don't see why I can't be respected and still keep the people I care about. Daniel smirked, like a teacher amused by a naive student. You're still thinking like a boy, not a man. Respect comes when you stop chasing approval. Sometimes it costs you love. Sometimes it costs you friendship. But in the end, you stand alone, untouchable. The way he said alone sent a shiver down my spine. I leaned back, staring at him, trying to read what he wasn't saying. He looked calm, too calm, as if he'd seen this transformation before in someone else, maybe even lived it himself. Look, I said, forcing my voice steady. If all this is just some game to you, I'm done. I didn't ask for a mentor. I didn't ask for your riddles. Daniel's eyes sharpened. He leaned in, his words cutting through the silence. You wouldn't be here if you didn't need me. Somewhere deep inside, you know I'm right. The question is, how much are you willing to lose to find out who you really are? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about guidance. This was about control. It didn't take long for Daniel's words to be tested. At the office, tensions were running high. We had a big client presentation coming up, and everyone was scrambling. Normally, I'd smooth things over, try to keep the peace. But that day, I didn't. When Mark, one of my colleagues, made a mistake on the slides, I called him out in front of everyone. You had one job, Mark. If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be here. The room went silent. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but instead of regret, there was a strange thrill, the kind of cold clarity Daniel had described. Later, Claire called me out at home. You're not the man I fell in love with, she said, her voice breaking. You're cruel. Do you even hear yourself anymore? And that night, alone on the balcony, Daniel appeared again across the way. He didn't need to say anything. The way he nodded, slow, approving, told me everything. But his approval no longer felt like victory. It felt like a trap. I couldn't sleep that night. Claire had cried herself to bed, and the silence in the apartment was unbearable. I sat on the couch, staring at the floor, when Daniel's voice broke the stillness, though he wasn't there. Not really. Respect comes when you stop chasing approval. I pressed my palms to my temples. Was I losing it? Or was he always in my head now, pulling the strings? The next day at work, the breaking point came. My boss, Mr. Hanley, pulled me into his office. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, he said. You've got talent, but this arrogance? It's poisoning the team. Either you fix it, or you'll find yourself out of a job. Out. Just like that. That evening, Claire confronted me again. She held my hand, her eyes desperate. I don't care about the money, or the promotion, or whatever you think you're chasing. I just want you back. Please. Her words cut deeper than anything Daniel had ever said. And for the first time, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Follow Daniel, and I might rise higher, untouchable, but alone. Or fight to hold on to the man I used to be. Imperfect, maybe softer, but loved. And for the first time, I didn't know if I still had a choice. I waited for him that night. Balcony door open, whiskey untouched. The city hummed below, but my focus was on the shadow across the courtyard. And like clockwork, he appeared. Daniel. Calm, confident, always watching. I didn't wait for him to speak. This ends tonight, I said, my voice louder than I intended. You've been in my head, twisting me, making me believe I needed you. But all I've done is lose, Claire, my friends, even myself. Daniel tilted his glass, the faintest smile on his lips. You haven't lost, he said smoothly. You've shed. Weakness. Illusions. You're stronger now. They don't leave you, you outgrow them. No, I snapped, standing. That's not strength. That's emptiness. You don't build respect by burning everything around you. You build it by standing for something. For someone. For the first time, his face changed. The calm slipped, just a flicker, annoyance, maybe even anger. You'll regret this, he said, his tone flat. You'll crawl back when the world chews you up. But I didn't answer. I shut the balcony door, pulled the curtains, and left him in the dark. Behind me, Claire's footsteps approached. She didn't say anything, just slipped her arms around me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight in my chest ease. But deep inside, one thought lingered. Daniel wouldn't let go that easily. Weeks passed. Slowly, the air in the apartment grew lighter. Claire laughed again. My colleagues stopped looking at me like I was a threat, and one even asked me to grab a beer. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Daniel never came back. Not across the balcony, not in my head. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch my reflection in the window and wonder, had he ever been there at all? Or was he always just the darker part of me, waiting for an invitation? One evening, Claire and I sat on the balcony together. The city stretched out before us, the same skyline where I once saw Daniel raising his glass. Almost lost everything, I admitted, my voice low. But you didn't, she said, squeezing my hand. You chose, and that was the truth. Respect didn't come from fear. It came from standing up for the man I wanted to be, not the one Daniel whispered I should become. I lifted my glass, not to him, not to the shadow, but to us, to the life I nearly destroyed and the strength it took to rebuild it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a man. Not untouchable, not alone, just real.